Now, we're going to talk about something that in 15 years on LBC I haven't talked about. And I'm not alone in that, because the world's media seems to be turning its eyes away from a conflict, a war that is happening in Africa. It's not the war in Sudan, it's the war in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's something that I'll admit that until we decided to do this hour, I knew very little about. I'll probably demonstrate over the next hour that I still know very little about it, but we've got people with us who do. And of course, there'll be many of you listening who may be exiles from the country living in Britain. We'd love to hear from you as well. And also to answer the more general question, well, why don't we take any notice of wars like this? It's the 11th biggest country in the world by landmass. It's got a fascinating history, and yet it's one of those countries that Neville Chamberlain would have described as a faraway country of which we know nothing. So we've got. Let me introduce you to the guests that we have in the studio with us. As I say, we want to hear from you. 0345 6060 973. Kito Tongoma is with us. He is president of the Congolese exile government. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
We have Yasmin Ahmed, who's UK director of the campaign group Human Rights Watch. Welcome to you again, Yasmin. And Mike Martin, who's a Liberal Democrat MP for Tunbridge Wells and a member of the Defence Select Committee. And Mike travelled around Congo in a Land Rover in 2013 and has co-written a book all about it and knows quite a bit about the country. Mike, welcome to you.
Hi, good evening.
Now, let's start. It's difficult to know where to start because we can't go into the whole history of the country, but effectively, well, Yasmin, you tell us sort of just in a 2-minute primer on the history of the Congo.
So the Congo is in the Great Lakes area of Africa. And what we've seen is it's a incredibly resource rich area. And we have seen conflict in the area for decades now, which have impacted civilians in the millions. We've seen millions of civilians displaced. We've seen millions of civilians need of humanitarian aid. And what we are seeing now is a ramping up of a conflict which has been happening on the border between the Congo and Rwanda, and in particular, the Rwandan government supporting an armed group called the M23.
Which they deny.
But we have, and many people, including the UN, human rights organisations and others, have documented their material and other support, and also that the Rwandan Defence Forces working alongside the M23. The M23 came about in about 2012, but its resurgence has been since 2023, and what we've seen in the last 3 years has been quite unprecedented. We've seen the M23 now, as of January and February, taking over 2 of the capital cities of Eastern Congo, and not just taking over the capitals, but actually setting up parallel administrations in another country. It would be like France coming into the UK and taking London and setting up a parallel government.
Don't give them ideas.
And obviously, like in any conflict, those that suffer are the civilians. And we've seen the M23 carry out severe and systemic human rights violations, sexual violence, summarily executing people. And what we're seeing currently on the ground as well is the targeting of civil society actors, the media, particularly in Goma and Bukavu, the 2 capital cities. And so the situation on the ground is dire. And that is not to say that this is wholly one-sided. We've also documented abuses that have happened and been carried out by the Congolese armed forces. But it's critical now. We're at a critical stage. And I think governments around the world know that Rwanda needs to be told loud and clear that they have to end their support. This cannot keep going. And we have seen some action, but it's very, very late and not significant enough, I would say.
Okito, this has been huge numbers of lives have been lost here, and we think back to the Rwandan genocide in 1994 when 900,000 people were slaughtered. This goes way beyond that, doesn't it?
Yes. But I think, as Yasmin said, thank you so much. That was a quite very important point you have raised. And I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon as well, because I know many people in my communities have been waiting for this. As you mentioned, it's 15 years since you had the time to speak about these issues, more than 15 years the people have been going through a very difficult situation. I'm a Congolese, and I'm very proud that I'm going to speak in the BBC today. LBC, thank you so much for clarity. Issue that is really part of my life, my people, and it's very sad that the way we see the story is been for a long time that nobody is been there to know what is happening.
But why is that? Why do you think the world community has effectively turned its back on?
Well, there has been a number one issue was in the region, Congo, number one, we got terrible history where we never had a stable regime. The more we go from Congo is a tyranny regime, barbaric leaders where there's a high level of human rights abuse that has been monitoring for many years. And then nobody knows really much about Congo itself as the very rich country with very good people who really the story need to be looking a different way.
Because it ought to be one of the richest, well, it is one of the richest countries in Africa from natural resources point of view.
What are we talking of the world? The Congo has got more than 24 trillion of water reserve. It's still one of the richest countries in the world.
Don't tell Donald Trump that.
But it's a very interesting one, and I want him to have interest. We believe that UK government and the other international community have interest for the wealth we got in Congo to know how to work with that. Now, there is no way Congo is going to keep on suffering where there's a lot for Congolese people to enjoy, and the world, the entire globe should be part of that. Now, going back to the question, I think we're going through a difficult time, and I understand that today is a way to mention that Paul Kagame has been manipulating the story in the region, and the M23s, doesn't matter what they are claiming, but are taking Congolese people's life. The way things going on, it should stop. And we really appreciate to see what the action was taken by our Foreign Secretary, most recently, David Lammy. He was really well recognized by our community. We see he went to Congo to meet the Congolese president, and he went even to the difficult place where Congolese are in hostage and they're living in a difficult place. That was exceptionally very good, and it was a welcome in our community.
And we should say, and this is, I have to say, a coincidence, that the UK has put down a resolution at the United Nations today demanding an unconditional ceasefire and withdrawal of the M23 and Rwandan Defence Forces from the DRC. That's a UK statement at the UN Security Council today.
We do appreciate that, and I think more have to be done. We think like Rwanda is not taking those actions more seriously. It's a country where I believe they don't even know how to appreciate everything Britain has been doing for them. Most recently, we see Paul Kagame being very arrogant. And this country, money has been really flourishing in Rwanda. We see the support that they receive, even training the army they are using now, everything they got. I don't think they have that enough power to be the country they are now without the support from.
And Britain has a lot of influence in Rwanda, doesn't
Very.
it? Because, I mean, I remember going to Rwanda in 2007.
Yeah.
I met Paul Kagame, actually. And the amount of international development aid that Britain has put into Rwanda, I mean, we've effectively replaced France as the most influential country there. So it is possible for Britain to have some influence, you would think, over Paul Kagame. But do you think the government is doing enough?
But at the moment, I think that's the right thing. They have to do more, because I think British people paying tax not to have criminal leaders around the globe now supported by a very good country. You had another caller earlier on who doesn't even recognize what this country is offering to many people. My community come to this country. We could not even speak English. We were welcome here, and I see people now, the generation of Congolese people being part of a very stable community, and we are growing, and they're seeing young Congolese learnings, getting much better degree, which we did not have in our country. So all this we should recognize. But going back to the history of what Paul Kagame sounded not to recognize everything that Britain's been doing, in return is giving terrible reputation of this country. We learn British value and the Commonwealth value. I think Rwanda should be out of the Commonwealth. It does not reflect the value of Commonwealth when killing ordinary and vulnerable Congolese in return by taking Congolese mineral resources. The worst ever scenario, Iana, I can add on that one. Paul Kagame is being using most young Congolese people, manipulating them, putting them in the Rwanda's army. 6 months after, they're going to be the one going to be rebel to start killing their own people in Congo. He's been using manipulation, exploiting more vulnerable young Congolese people because of lack of education on the ground, and they're using a different way by using Congolese minerals. Apart from that, we got terrible, very weak regime in the ground in Congo. All these have to be raised up.
Okay, well, we'll go into some more of those details in a minute, but let's bring Mike Martin into the conversation, Liberal Democrat MP for Tunbridge Wells. Now, Mike, you spent, I gather, 3 months touring Congo back in 2013. Tell us about your interest in the country.
Well, actually, the first time I went to Congo was in 2004. And like many people, I was in Uganda, and we went across to see the gorillas, with amazing mountain gorillas that you have in the east of Congo. And I was just struck by a country that at that time was coming out of this horrendous civil war. And actually, I'm amazed we haven't mentioned it yet. In the 1990s, Congo suffered what is known as the Great African War, and 5 or 6 million people died. I mean, this is sort of on the scale of the First World War. Yeah. And you were speaking earlier about how Congo doesn't really make the news, but this in the 1990s was a kind of millions of deaths level event that was barely reported, and all of the neighbouring countries were involved, and particularly Rwanda. But all of them were involved, reaching in and putting their militias in. And so I then, in 2013 with some friends, we bought a Land Rover off eBay, and we'd driven it through Africa down to Kinshasa. And then we spent the next 2-3 months driving it across the Congo to South Sudan. And, when you drive across a country that doesn't have any roads, and Congo doesn't really have any roads, I mean, a lot of the roads were built in the Belgian colonial era, which maybe we'll get onto at some point in the programme, because I think that's an important part of the framing of how you understand Congo at the moment. Those roads had disappeared to simple paths through the jungle, so we had to really kind of clear our way, build bridges. And really, even at that stage in 2013, 10 years further on from my visit in 2004, the country hadn't really moved on at all. And in many ways, the way to understand Congo is a collection of different villages and tribes and ethnicities that speak different languages. And there is a sense of being Congolese. There's a sense of connection to the Congo River, which is the major river that runs through the country, and they are Congolese, but there is not that sense of nationalism that perhaps we have in the UK. We all understand we're British or French, and when different villages are speaking different languages, it's quite hard I'm talking about neighbouring villages here. It's quite hard for a country to form a national sense of who it is, and that makes it very easy. In this case, we're talking about Rwanda, but 20 years ago, we could have been talking about Angola or Central African Republic reaching in, interfering. It makes it very easy for those neighbouring countries like Rwanda to cultivate militia groups in order to prosecute whatever it's trying to do, steal resources, take over the government. And I think it's really worth saying that of all of the overthrows of the Congolese government that we've had since Congo became independent in the 1960s, all of them have started in Rwanda. All of them start in the east, in Rwanda, and they move across the country to Kinshasa, which is in the west of the country.
And it's bizarre in a way, isn't it? Because Rwanda is such a small country. I mean, if you look at the map of Africa, it's a sort of little pinprick in the middle, yes. and then the neighbour to the east is this massive, giant country called Congo, and yet Rwanda, as you say, Mike, has that huge amount of influence.
I think, and we can kind of hypothesize about reasons. I think what's really worth looking at is Rwanda is a relatively unified country when you compare it to Congo. There are kind of 2 main ethnic groups, Hutus and Tutsis, obviously, brought to our attention in the genocide. They obviously fought against each other. But and they've benefited greatly from Western aid, and I hope we get into the role of the British governments, both Labour and Conservative. Obviously, the Conservatives recently had their Rwanda plan. Hundreds of millions of pounds were given to Rwanda, and now we see a Rwandan invasion in Congo. So I think that's something that we need to pick apart. But the Congo is not unified like that. It's huge, and there are 200 languages there. And 200 ethnic groups. I mean, it was, as I was travelling across it, I'm not exaggerating to say that village to village, people were speaking different languages, and people don't get out of their village. And what that means for the politics of the country is that even within a district, there's obviously, hundreds of districts in the country. Even within a district, the leaders of that district sit in the district centre and don't even visit all the villages in there because they're having little local feuds over a mine or a river or something. So all over the country, there's all these little micro civil wars going on, these little tiny fights going on.
Just like Yorkshire and Lancashire.
Or Afghanistan, or it's a very it never really has been governed as you and I might understand a country to be governed.
Right, so much to get our teeth into. We also want to hear from you. 0345 6060 973. If you've been to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or should we say DRC? It's sort of trips off the tongue easier, doesn't it? If you know anything about it, we'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions for our three guests as well, 0345 6060 973. I should also add, we're streaming this live on Global Play if you want to watch our proceedings as well. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
This week at
Government. Yasmin Ahmed is the UK director of the campaign group Human Rights Watch. Excuse me. And Mike Martin, Liberal Democrat MP for Tunbridge Wells. He's on the Defence Select Committee and has travelled through the DRC on at least 2 occasions that he's told us about. Okay, Kito, let me come to you. I want to hear your personal story. I mean, how did you end up being the president of the Congolese exiled government? You obviously grew up in the DRC. Tell us your story.
Thank you. I think I'm very pleased to mention this today. I left Congo in 1997 when I came to this country. We had Mobutu was leading the country. And when I come to United Kingdom, I come as an ordinary person who were looking for safety. I was recognized by the authority. And at the time, we had a very massive, big community of Congolese people here in the United Kingdom. There was an issue between us to deal with unity, and there was a number of issues affecting young Congolese as well. So we had a problem for integration. So my work was number one when I went to university, because I went to Middlesex University. I was very lucky when I went to Tottenham College. I was very lucky to have quite very massive high grade. And I was given a conditional offer to study in Middlesex University, where I studied computer science. Then at the same time, as a young person, I had a quite very good
So how old were you when you came here?
I was 26.
Right.
So we had a quite very good opportunity to access different support. So I moved on with my community to start building a community where it had a bigger problem with a language issue. And I'm going to jump on because of not enough time. I remember in 2007, 2008, we had a serious problem. There was a growing number of young Congolese people were exposed to high level of crime. And we were not really moving forward. And the family were not stable within our community in the diasporas. So number one was I was introduced with UK Citizen, which was an organization who bring community together. So we managed to get our community to be part of UK Citizen. That time I was the leader of the Congolese support group, which I'm still leading now. So we managed to go, and we are given a good chance to have a very good leadership training, which I think should help my country now. So we had a good community leadership training. So we had a lot of young people and the young Congolese to become community leaders. The issue was to resolve the conflict we had internally. We identified the main cause of this conflict, which is likely to be in our country at the moment, because I understand if Martin was in Congo, there's something unique about Congolese. You have to be in Congo to know how we really interacted to each other. We got different tribes and different dialects, but those dialects, they are connected to 4 different languages. So when you're in Congo, you can connect to anyone with 4 languages. And the Lingala is well spoken by anyone in Congo. So it's quite very good at Mobutu time. Now, that is an issue where you have to be in Congo to know how we are connected. Now, when I come back to how we managed to get our community organized and myself become leaders, there was a number of issues where we have to resolve. How are we going to have the level of crime reduced in our community and the people going through a lot of mental health? And there was a divorce in our families. We identified the main cause of them were Congolese leaders were sending people here, were politicians with hatred message. And then number 2, we identified there was a musician from Congo. They were coming here and singing in our language, creating hatred in our young people. And that was easily manipulating young people like Paul Kagame is using young people in Congo at the moment. So what we did was we banned Congolese music, number 1. We said we don't want to see Congolese music in the United Kingdom in our community, and we don't want to see all Congolese politicians with hatred message in the United Kingdom. We managed to work with local authority. We had a good support of United Kingdom support. It's a grateful country when we say the way they support community, and we had a stable community. And as a leader, I was leading the initiative and how we started with the plan. 20 years now almost, we had a very successful community. We see young Congolese people changing, and I was elected as a leader of the community at that time. Now, the issue raised a serious concern that we have to get involved at a community from Belgium, from France, and from United States, and Germany, almost all other Europe. So I walk around all this country to bring our community together. And from there, I was elected as a leader of the Congolese community more than once, and then I was also elected as president of the Congolese in exile.
How many Congolese people are there in the UK?
We're talking now almost 120,000.
Really?
In the United Kingdom, yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we got a big number.
And compared to other countries in France, Germany?
But in France, we got big concentration in Belgium. Both France and Belgium, we're talking roughly more than 500,000.
Right, because of course Belgium is a former colonial power.
Yes, there's a massive community there. So we have a really massive community in the United Kingdom, and now it's also growing with young people born here. So we got a very stable community really in the United Kingdom, and we're talking about Germany and the different part of it.
And is there a hope one day that, I mean, I imagine a huge number of the community here have been born here, have never even been there, but is there a hope one day that that peace will be restored and that people will be able to return or even go for the first time?
It has always been a hope. And we've been working hard to see stable Congo so we can have people return. And then now there is a need for Congolese and the diaspora to go and help the country with what is going to happen now. There's a need for negotiation to resolve the conflict. And I think the knowledge and the expertise that we are having from Britain and the different countries as the diasporas is really a very positive, that could be a good outcome for the country at the moment. But what we see, the regime is scared of the talent and the potential that we are having as a diaspora, and especially those from United Kingdom. So we're thinking that there's a time now where we have to start thinking, because we had a long meeting where we believe that this time has arrived now to see how we can participate and help the country. To see young people being manipulated by Paul Kagame and creating a movement where they are killing their own brother, their own people, and they're claiming to be rebel for no reason, like M23. When you ask them what they are claiming, it does not make sense.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the situation as it is today. Yasmin Ahmed, let's bring you in here. Britain has made this statement at the UN Security Council today. I have read over the past few months, it sort of seems to have crept up the international agenda a little bit. But what in practical terms could be done by the international community to try and bring this war to an end?
Well, I think, firstly, it's really important, in picking up what other guests have said. I think Rwanda, for decades now, particularly since the genocide, has been built up and very purposely been branded by Paul Kagame as a development darling. And many countries in the West have seen it that way, as a stable, a very effective and efficient development partner. But what that masks is the repression inside Rwanda, significant repression that Human Rights Watch, Amnesty and many others have been documenting now for decades. And what we're seeing, just going back to what we were talking about before, is that exportation of that oppression now into Congo that we've seen through the M23. We're seeing exactly, I mean, I was in Chogam for the Commonwealth Heads of State conference. And, you know, the UK government at that time, we were urging them at that time, because this was happening. The M23 were active at that time, supported by Rwanda. We said you should not be having Chogam, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda at the very time that they are carrying out these abuses in the DRC. And yet everyone came. And at the same time, we know we were sitting there at meetings, and only meters away from us, journalists were sitting in detention. Street children had been swept off the streets because it wasn't what the image of what Kagame wanted. So I would say that and then obviously, as has been mentioned, the UK government was also very, I would say, wrong-footed, both from the perspective of holding Rwanda to account, but also in terms of their international obligations, by having a deal and spending millions of taxpayer dollars on what has been a failed but unlawful deal with Rwanda, where they were trying to expel all asylum seekers.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I mean, Mark Martin, let's talk about that for a second, because the fact that deal has now been rejected by the new Labour government, I mean, it seems to me, I'm not quite sure where they are in terms of how much they are going to have to pay in compensation. I think there are difficulties between the Rwandan government and the Labour government over that. But Mike, that actually means that we have less influence on Rwanda now, doesn't it?
I mean, I suppose that's one way of looking at it. And the other way of looking at it is that we've given Rwanda hundreds of millions of pounds, and that's money that they can use to, I'm not saying they have done this, I have no evidence for this, but it is money that they can use to equip their armed forces to pursue their foreign policy objectives. This argument about we pay aid in order to get influence, I've always been a little bit skeptical of that argument, because having spent quite a lot of time in different countries like Congo or Afghanistan or Somaliland, the aid relationship, some aid works very, very well and some aid doesn't work so well. And the aid that doesn't work so well is often that aid where foreign countries are paying it in order to gain influence. And because the country knows that the Western power or the European power is paying it to gain influence, they can then actually effectively do what they want. They'll take the money and do what they want because they know that the Western power is doing it to try and achieve something or to gain some kind of influence. And so actually it's the least effective type of aid when it's given in order to have some sort of long stick to poke around in the country. But the UK's had a really long-standing blind spot, I would say, frankly, for Rwanda. The Tony Blair Institute, obviously the former Labour Prime Minister in the UK, has done a huge amount of work in Rwanda. As Yasmin said, development darling, it's the perfect phrase that Yasmin's come up with. That's exactly how it was seen. And what was ignored was the repression by one community of the governing by the governing community of another community, and people put in prison and media freedom censored and all that kind of stuff, and that was sort of ignored. And if you follow that, Rwanda thinks, well, we can get away with that, and then they got offered hundreds of millions of pounds for some kind of weird refugee resettlement program under the Conservatives, and they think, well, we can get away with that as well. And now what do we find? We find Rwanda's invading a neighbouring country. I think it's been a pretty poor bit of foreign policy from the British government, I think, actually.
Will in Paris says, Ian, you need to talk about King Leopold and Belgium's history in Congo. We could be here all night if we talked about Belgium's history in Congo, but we will mention that. I don't know which one of you three would like to talk about that, but we'll discuss that while we hear the news. And we'll come to your calls. We've got lots of calls coming in, which is really encouraging. It's 8:33 on LBC. Let's get the news headlines from Daryl Jackson.
A former Prime Minister of Russia has told LBC President Putin has no interest in a ceasefire and is just dreaming of sanctions being lifted. Speaking on Tonight with
Mike Martin, Liberal Democrat MP for Tunbridge Wells and a member of the Defence Select Committee, knows the country well. Right, let's go to some calls. If there is a reason to bring in the Belgian colonial era, we will do, but I am keen to get to the calls. Let's go to Charles, who's a new caller in Beckenham. Charles, hello.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much for taking my call. I am somebody from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I lived quite around the border of before I came to this country in 2007. As a result of flight of having spent 10 years in a refugee camp in Zambia. Now, thank you so much for addressing this, because really the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I wish that so many British would go there, but I know that because of French, the British people do not know really, they really don't know what's going on. I'm sorry, and I'm so sad that the Congo is in such a situation. what I would like you to do to help people with is to ask them what they think, as you said, what they think Britain can do. We know that Britain or the United Kingdom is a very strong country, including America and France, and what should be done? There are many issues. I just want to mention a few of them. One being, people in Africa want to cling on power. Those presidents, once they are elected, they sit on. They drag all the brothers and sisters and. brothers-in-laws and sisters-in-laws and all those people, and they sit, the country becomes theirs, while other people are suffering. The power has been always centered in Kinshasa. When people are in Kinshasa dancing, drinking, having good bread and feasting, people in places like where I come from are having absolutely nothing. Go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, you'll see the true pain and the true poverty.
Okay.
That's number one.
Well,
number two.
Okay, Charles, get your number two. We can't go beyond number two because of time reasons, but do carry on.
Okay. Number two. The wealth in the Democratic Republic of Congo may be the reason for all this. It looks like the West doesn't. It seems like wealth is being dragged through Rwanda, and then nobody is saying that. Nobody is trying to address that. That's number two. Number three. People that flee from war. When you flee from war, you don't know where you are going. You have absolutely nothing. And just like one caller said, people arrive in those places, they give birth, they stay there. People that came from Rwanda, they stayed in the Congo, and then they have given birth. Now, telling them that you are not Congolese is becoming so difficult. So what should be done?
All right, well, let's ask our panel to answer that question very briefly, because I want to get to another call. Yasmin, let's start with you.
Well, I think this UK government does need to be given credit, as has been mentioned. They have taken some very strong steps. They have paused bilateral aid, except for aid that's absolutely critical for the survival of people in Rwanda. They've ceased attending meetings that are being held by Rwanda, and they are limiting trade with Rwanda as well. And we've also seen the EU carry out sanctions over the last month or so, as well as the US, on M23 officials as well as Rwandan officials. And we saw just recently the EU sanctioned the CEO of the state-run Rwandan Mines, Petroleum and Gas Board for exploiting armed conflict through the explicit exploitation and trade of natural resources. And I think, as the caller mentioned, this is also a lot about what DRC has to offer people and what people can exploit from the DRC. And what we're seeing in this current context is that Rwanda and the M23 are exploiting Rwanda, and we're seeing them not only taking over capital cities, but taking over also mines and other places. So I think the international community has a very, very important role. The UK government has stepped up. We need to see sanctions now. We haven't seen sanctions from them, but they need to be continuing, as you said, at the Security Council and elsewhere, concerted action alongside the EU and the US so that Rwanda...
Is aid still going to Rwanda from the UK? So
what they have said is that they have suspended bilateral development aid, but core humanitarian aid for the most vulnerable in Rwanda will be kept going.
Okay, let's go to Tim, who's an e-caller in Durham. Hello, Tim.
Hi there, Ian. Thank you for talking about this issue. It's, as you've already said, it's not getting much coverage on a lot of media. So it's really great that you are doing this hour and making people aware of what's happening. So I'm the CEO of a small charity called World in Need, and we help to support a school that is actually in Goma. So it's right in the the eye of the storm of what's been happening out there. In the first few days, the communication was really difficult. We couldn't get hold of anybody and we couldn't find out what was going on at all. Fortunately, things have stabilized in that regard a little bit, and we are able to now get WhatsApp communication with people, but we're still very unaware of what's happened to all of the sponsored children and all of the children, some of the children at the school. The school is back open right now, and we're told that the rebels actually want the schools open. They want things to be operating normally. But the attendance is very low currently at the school, and we're not sure whether that's because people have fled or been harmed during the conflict, or exactly why. But the main challenge that my partners on the ground are telling me that people have right now is that, and I'm not sure whether anybody's already spoken about this or not, but whilst a lot of systems like the internet is back up and various things are kind of operational, the banking system has been quite badly affected. I think, I don't know whether that's because Kinshasa have chosen to shut it down or exactly what the details are there, but the issue is that people can't get money to buy food and water and essentials. So the food is available in the markets and water is available, things that people need are there, but because people aren't getting paid, they can't work their jobs, and even if they can, they can't get hold of money out of the banks. There's a real crisis going on in that regard, and that's one of the areas that we're trying to help deal with just in a small way, as much as we can. The other thing that I think is quite pertinent is the whole issue of child soldiers. So yeah. I haven't visited DRC myself, but I have been to Uganda 9 times. And I've previously met former child soldiers in the north of Uganda and heard just absolutely horrific stories, things that, details I won't go into unless you really want me to. But, it's absolutely barbaric what happens with them. And I'm told that right now in Congo, the rebels are forcing boys to join the rebel forces, and if they won't go, they are just shooting them dead on the spot. As I said, I know what may lay in store for some of those children, and I think that's also an issue. That kind of area of use of child soldiers, I believe that's a war crime under UN conventions, and so that's something I think that the British government and other organisations could be bringing more to the forefront and applying more pressure on.
Thank you very much, Tim. Tricia in Antwerp has texted in to say, there is a statue of King Leopold outside my window here in Antwerp. He was a very wicked man. The atrocities he inflicted on the Congolese people, yet his statue remains here. Well, maybe a little bit about King Leopold after the break. We'll see if we have time. It's 8:45.
This is LBC.
Oh, and how? I mean, that's a great asset to the country, but it could lead to massive exploitation.
Yes, Ian, I think that's something we have to mention. Let me just say to most people around the globe who are listening to this, every single mobile phone we are having has got Congo in there. 90% of mobile phone we got.
I thought it was just China.
All right. The Chinese, they are using Congolese mineral to do that. So they don't have a mineral to do the mobile phone. The coltan is the natural resources that go in our mobile phone to give it electric devices that resist any power. And the cobalt is also using an electric car, and the Congo does provide 80% of that natural resources. I think the market of Congo at the moment, that's the main cause you see Congolese people being killed. We mentioned a bit earlier, even when I left my country, my life was not safe. And speaking now, most young Congolese life is still in a danger in our own country because our natural resources is the main issue, and the weakest leader we've been having for generations, enabled to see how to resolve the problem and how to work with people who really kind of care about Congolese. I think when we have a question, I really appreciate Tim when he mentioned about young people in Goma and what is going on now with people cannot even access school and the food they want, the banks are closed. All those issues is the most dangerous time in the Congolese people, and it's the right time for us in the United Kingdom and around the globe to see how we can help those people there. This is a place where we're talking 2 big cities with more than 7 million people. and the people have left the home now, living in the difficult places. Young people cannot access a school and the different means. People are dying for malnutrition, not even water. Everything is in a mess at the moment. This issue of rebel group claimed to be supported by Rwanda, who tried to deny serious crime around the globe, is not really an issue we should be watching.
See here, Coco says, natural resources have been a curse to the Congolese people.
But it's a blessing, but we didn't know how to use it. At the moment, I think in the coming years, if you look in the history of the Congo, those resources will be very useful for the coming generation if we really know how to work out. Because it's in a negative way at the moment, the way we've seen it, because we are not really dealing with them properly. Because we need...
Mike, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, sorry, Akito, but
sorry.
No. You're making exactly the right point. It's just there's two things, I think. My observation is there's two things going on. One is the Congo is kind of quite a unified country, lots of different ethnic groups and languages, and it's not connected up. There are no roads, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
so the country is not connected up. The first thing I would do is build lots of roads to build the country. Sure. A lot of the ethnic groups are connected more to neighbouring countries than they are to the Congo itself. And so if you think about a country that's that disunified, that has all of these very valuable resources in, what that does is it drives conflict. Whereas if you have a country that has resources that is much more unified, let's say Saudi Arabia, then that can drive unity. And so it's those two things together. It's the resources that are spread out and the disunified country and of course colonisation. Absolutely.
I want to bring in another caller.
Sure.
Is it urgent?
No, just because of what Martin mentioned about being a country, how we are not unified at the moment. I think the story will be totally different when you look in the past story of the Congo. When we had a Mobutu, a dictator, we are very united. But the issue came in the division when Rwanda started playing the role of a dividing country with the make-up and manipulating story which does not exist in the Congo. There's something unique in the Congo, Martin, which I think I'm very impressed with the way you have been working extremely hard and that you identify some of the weaknesses that we have to raise them up, to have a Congo growing in a stable nation. But those issues could be resolved because Congolese, they are very united. Right. But they have been manipulated by people to divide them because we know our weaknesses and that people know our weaknesses.
Let's go to Sylvester in Southampton. Sylvester, hi, what would you like to say?
Thank you for having me on board, on the radio, sorry. First of all, I wanted to talk about the humanitarian aspect because I think that at the moment not enough is being said or stressed enough about the dire situation of the Eastern Congo. I'm originally from Congo myself, and I work for a small organization called the Congolese Action Youth Platform, and we have people on the ground in Goma that we help relief. And recently, you may have seen reports of entire refugee camps being dismantled in DRC, in the occupied territories. Activists are being persecuted, and as others mentioned, forced recruitment of school children, etc. But the humanitarian crisis is severe. It's not just that people don't have the means to look after themselves. I mean, we've seen the UK increase its humanitarian help, and we really appreciate that. But I just feel like at the moment, the level of escalation that needs to be done is not met. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the level of sanctions was much harder, much higher. Even private company got involved, and rightfully so. But I feel like there is always this double standard or almost neo-colonial politics when it comes to DRC and the lives of Congolese that is simply not put as a priority, despite everybody recognizing the very crucial role that Congo plays in the world's economy. And I think just that is not right. And I just want to say that I would like to push back on one of the points that's been raised about the natural resources of Congo being put as a curse, or Congo being too big or too rich, and that being the cause of its dismay. I think, again, as a Congolese, I find that quite insulting to have this kind of language because...
Well, to be fair, it was only one person on WhatsApp, Sylvester.
Yeah, okay, because the reason why I say I really have to push back on this because since the independence of Congo, there's been constant international interference, starting with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, of each time the Congolese people have tried to get within their hand the sovereignty of their country. Under Mobutu, there's been a political hitman sent him to ask us to sell out our national company so that American can get access to the resources. Today, after the Cold War, he got rid of and got replaced by another dictator. Congolese, up to this day, haven't had the chance to really have a leader that comes from the wish of the people, and that cannot be just swept under the carpet under the guise that you are just a country that is too rich.
No, it's a very good point and a really good call, Sylvester. Thank you for phoning in. Let's go to John, who's a new caller in Oxford. John, very good evening.
Yeah, hiya. Because my question was just about, I think was directing to the gentleman that says representing, I think, the Congo exiled people.
Yeah.
I was born in Burundi. And Burundi, I think, is we share same borders. And it's really fascinating me how every issue that's happening in Congo, you have to be blamed to Rwanda at the moment. Yeah. Whatever is happening there is very sad. I grew up in war that started in 1994. I'm 43 at the moment. And seeing only one country can be blaming Congo, Rwanda, this and that. Congo is very big than Rwanda. What can people start thinking to point fingers to the current government in Congo? Because I believe they're allowing all these things to happen in their country. Because they've got the right to defend their own country as well. At the moment, we have Burundian army fighting for the Congolese army at the moment. So my question is, why keeping, pointing finger at one country instead of, asking serious question to the current government what's going on?
Okay, Okito, what's your answer?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your question. And it's been very kind to hear from you from Burundi, our neighbor country. And we really appreciate your support you're giving to Congo nowadays. But I think we have an issue in the comment that you should consider, my brother, you're talking now. You know well that during the Rwandese genocide, more than almost half of the country come to Congo, and we give them safe haven. They were in a safe place in Congo at the moment. Those people who come to claim to be FDLR. These are the majority Hutu group, where Paul Kagame is keep on accusing them of being genocidaire. Now, the problem we have in Congo at the moment with Rwanda, because it's got some external support, Rwanda does not have a power to fight Congo. They don't make anything. They don't have anything to do it. Everything they are using is from Congo. Now, there's an issue in the Congo that you really had a good point when you mentioned about the weaknesses of our leaders who have been unable to resolve this problem since almost 30 years. But we have to recognize also that there is a problem in Rwanda. As you've spoken as being in Burundi, you should know that the Rwandese now need some help to get their people back to Rwanda. The problem is not Congo. The Rwandese got more than 5 million people in the Congo that don't want to go back because Paul Kagame has been targeting them. He's killing them. Now, we've been a victim of that because we are protecting people. And in Congo, we have people from your country as well. We have a safe place where people from all over the country, we're sharing border, almost 9 of them, they come to our country. We accepted you. We live with you in harmony. We never had a problem with anyone. The only problem we have in Congo is to welcome our neighbor country. And they see the Congolese, we are very weak. An issue between, which is true, people know how to use us. We love music. We like to be happy. We don't have time. Congolese don't have anything to do apart from happinesses. And this has been used by our neighbor country to come and exploit our natural resources, causing problem. We can blame our leaders, which I do blame them. They're quite very weak. But in return, we have to recognize that Rwanda being smaller does not reflect what they're doing in the region because they go support from powerful country. We're talking the United Kingdom has built Rwanda, which Rwanda has never recognized that. It's shameful to have somebody like that. Young people watching Paul Kagame, talking to people in Rwanda, telling them he's the one who built Rwanda. He does not recognize all the contribution coming from country like United Kingdom, like yourself and myself, we're paying tax here, and the money is being used to help people there in Rwanda. Paul Kagame never recognized that. In return, he's using this money to kill innocent Congolese. We have to condemn that. I think as a neighbor, you should condemn Paul Kagame to make sure that we have a stable party of the region. And our people deserve much better, not having people like Paul Kagame.
Well, some passionate words there.
He's a dangerous person.
We could go on for another hour, because there's part of me that feels we've only scratched the surface here. We still haven't mentioned King Leopold, but people can look him up and see what he did. But Yasmin Ahmed, Akito Tongomo and Mike Martin, thank you very much for making this, I think, a really educational hour, and I hope our listeners have appreciated it. Thank you very much indeed.